Bigger than capes.
Give me some outside.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it, and then I watched it.
Right.
Hello, welcome to Bigger Than Capes. I'm Zach, and this week I'm joined by Will. What's shaking?
Howdy. What's shaking? All of me shaking like a cold leaf because the energy prices are through the roof, and I'm making this political now.
I didn't expect any of that, but
I didn't either. It really came pouring out.
Here we are. I mean, it is cold, I'll give you that, and I am poor, so...
Power to the people, or something.
Speaking of being poor and cold, why not support us through our coffee page? Why not support us through our coffee page? And be sure to check out our website, biggerthancapes.com, for all those reviews Angela writes, and sometimes the rest of us.
Cha-ching.
Not the smoothest way of doing that, but the first time I've remembered to plug it in weeks.
Yeah. It'll come. It'll be smoother. What have you been up to, buddy?
Not as much as I would like. I've kind of a couple of weeks ago decided to start like trying to catch up on things, like things I've never finished or comics and such. So I watched all of Daybreak in like a week, and then found out afterwards that was based on a graphic novel, which is kind of a post-apocalyptic thing with kind of not quite zombies and such. Really, really good. I would recommend Daybreak.
Awesome.
I would also recommend, and you obviously know this, but I discovered that I'd only watched half of Preacher.
Oh.
So I've now finished season 3 and I'm halfway through season 4. And well, Preacher's good, isn't it?
It is good. It is good. I was really happy that it didn't follow the comic specifically, because I really, really like the original graphic novels. But it would have been kind of lame just to see that played out again on screen. Yeah,
and it deviates quite quickly. Like season 1 doesn't really happen in the comics, does it?
No. Well, it kind of happens right at the end, like that town.
Yes.
And the kind of I can't remember what his character's called, but like the King of Meat.
Oh God, yeah. They don't mention him after season 1, so I honestly can't remember. But yeah,
because the town explodes, doesn't it? But yeah, that sort of happens at the end of the comics. But you know, I like that's kind of artistic license. It made it worthwhile. While all the characters felt like they broke, so they were recognizable as sort of who they were supposed to be. But yeah, it took a few different directions with it.
I think it's a lot of the same stuff, just rearranged, which kind of works.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a completely insane story, regardless of what order you put the events in.
Absolutely.
But I'm close to finishing it. I'm looking forward to finishing it, and it kind of makes me want to reread the comic, but I also know it's pretty long, and I feel like the comic is definitely more over the top than the series.
It's funny, in some ways it is, and in some ways it isn't. Like there are whole chunks taken out. But if you remember the sort of, it's got Jesus Dessard bit,
yes,
which just doesn't really happen in the show. And there's a bit where they kind of meet a serial killer. That doesn't really happen in the show. And the sort of like, I don't want to say too much because I know you haven't finished it, so I stopped showing my tracks there of my thought.
We can revisit this when I finish if you want.
Yeah. There are bits of it though, like Hairstar, I think, is a better character in the TV show than he is in the comics. He's more involved and like multi-layered,
more likable,
sort of likable in a truly bizarre way. Have you seen the bit where he's gone through his training? It like flashes back to him.
Yes, I can't remember when that is, but yes, I have.
It's just a bit where like they're supposed to, I think like supposed to disarm each other, and he just starts like masturbating at this guy.
Yeah,
And the guy loses concentration, and he like tackles him down, and it's.
I mean, it's a choice.
It's really weird, but I found it very funny.
What a weird show.
Yeah, but that's it, man. You don't see it every day. You want different. You want new. There it is. That's what it is.
I think when I finish Preacher, I might take a little break before finally catching up on The Boys, because I started series 2 and then just never finished. So apparently I just have a tendency of doing that with anything on Amazon Prime. I'll like watch an episode and be like, I'll come back to this.
Yeah, well, I've still got The Expanse to finish. One season left of that. I'm really looking forward to that, because I think, was it the 4th series? Was that the first Amazon Prime one?
I think so, yeah.
Where they land on that planet for a bit. I thought that one was a bit weak, but everything else has been pretty stellar.
Yeah, I think 4 was a bit hit and miss. I think there's still good things in it, but
it just kind of trod water a little bit. It narrowed the story down a lot from the galactic level to
I think that's fair.
Level. I like The Boys quite a lot. Again, I think the same thing really is that it's got the DNA, but it has taken
its own weird approach.
Yeah, quite different choices. I've watched a few episodes of Diabolical.
I had forgotten that was a thing.
The Boys animated thing, and it's kind of hit and miss.
Okay.
Like there are different writers and different animation styles, and some of them have worked for me, and some not so much.
All right, that's interesting. I mean, I'm sure I'll get there at some point in the next
billion years.
In the next 1 to 5 years. But it's been nice to actually try and catch up on some stuff, and most of it's been good, so that's nice.
Absolutely.
I'm also trying to learn to stop watching and reading things that I don't like.
Indeed, it's a tough lesson, and I too am trying to master that art.
I think we both have the kind of completionist nature about us that we have to know everything, watch everything, finish everything.
Yeah, it's the kind of the reliance on continuity that's kind of bred into you, that it's actually important.
Yeah.
And well, we're probably going to come to the same conclusion that it isn't.
Yeah, very, very, yeah. A great case in point is I also watched all of Afterlife 2 weeks ago, and boy, do I hate Afterlife. So
just read it, watched it all anyway.
There's not that much of it. It was easy to do, but with every episode, it was just a kind of, all right, I guess.
Go again.
To be fair, I think I played Tetris whilst watching all of it, which
it sounds like something to be done in the 80s.
Yeah. I watched some TV and I played some Tetris, man. Wizard.
I've had a few good reads recently. I too have been catching up a little bit. I reread the first volume of Wasted Space, and then the second volume for the first time. And I've got the third volume ready to go.
I've been intending to do that for so long.
It's good though. I think
I absolutely loved the first volume and was always like, I'm going to carry on with this. And well, here we are.
I think the art is not my kind of favorite style.
Yes.
I think in its presentation, in terms of what's happening in the panel, I think it's really good. Like the way it makes the ship move and that sort of thing. But the actual line work is a bit kind of scratchy for my personal taste.
Yeah, I think it's an art style that I like, but it's one that's very kind of stylized. And
it is, yeah. And I think you're into it or you're not. It's not really a judgment thing for me. It's just, yeah, not for me, that one. But the characters and the story's great, and as I say, it's never unclear in the art. I'm not having a hard time reading it. It's probably what would kind of keep it overall off being a bit of an all-timer for me. But the actual sort of reading experience is real fun. I've been continuing to catch up on Atomic Robo.
Which I feel like we mentioned in the last podcast.
Probably.
Or did we have we just talked about that in life, like real life?
I think we did talk about it fairly recently. But yeah, it's great. It's one of my favourite, I think it's now published in paper by Dark Horse, but was self-published originally.
I'm inclined to agree with that, but I honestly can't remember if that's true.
I'm reaching into the memory somewhere. I think it's Dark Horse. But it's great. It's about Tesla creates a sentient robot in kind of the 30s or the late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that point, you follow Atomic Robo. You jump through time, not literally like time travel, but I mean, you pick up different points in the 90s, in the 50s. Although it jumps back and forth, he does, it's a really good job of keeping Robo consistent. In the 20s, he acts like a teenager, he's a goof. When you get to the 90s, he's like a dad. He becomes all serious.
Pretty cool.
And they set up stories that it's not like a continuous story. Each volume is relatively self-contained, but there are things set up in previous volumes that emerge later on that after dissing continuity, I should say. It is fun over a short period of time, and the payoff actually, is enjoyable. So that's really good. I'd recommend that to basically anybody who likes comics. I think it's top tier. And I dipped my toe into some Euro comics recently and picked up Yojimbot.
Oh, yeah, you also told me about this.
I've read the first volume so far, or the first part, as European comics are coming out in smaller or bigger, depending how you is it the equivalent of one issue and it's a really thick issue, or is it the equivalent of a trade and it's a really thin trade?
I'm inclined to say the latter, but I feel like in reality it's somewhere in the middle of the two.
So I think they're 50, 60 pages.
Yeah, and it's normally it's a really minimal team that works on it. So it's normally two creators, if not one creator, which then means you kind of get a volume when it's finished rather than the 30 days to work on that next issue. Or so I think it's more in the graphic novel trade kind of territory than it is in the singles, but
I prefer that. We've been waiting a long time for more Black Sad, but it's coming, and it's
this is the year.
Surely going to be glorious. But it seems to be about a deserted theme park. So these robots just kind of wander around playing out fight scenarios for no one. But then there's also a little boy and some sort of fascist police who seem to be after the boy, and the robot sort of seems to gain some modicum of sentience and save the boy.
Okay.
Thus their adventures continue. It looks incredible. In that sort of, as you say, if it's a small team and they just work until it's right rather than just put out when it's due, this is the end result. Every page and every panel looks superb. I'll
be honest, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, another one worth looking out for.
Okay. Definitely. I think I will, definitely. I assume you've purchased this on Comixology before the change.
Before the change. Yeah. It kept, when reminders come up on your various devices, and like most human beings, you say, not now.
Yes.
Wait the 3 days for it to pop up again. Finally, the Comixology one came up saying, what would you rate this out of 5 stars? And I thought, okay, now I'm going to listen to you. 1 star, submit. If you're going to keep asking, I'm going to give you the honest answer.
I think the app works better than the website does. The website stresses me out.
Yeah.
And I thought Comixology was a really good resource. The fact that it would tell you things like genre and release date and things that were helpful for, running a comics podcast, say.
Yeah.
And kind of taking out that by making it fit the Amazon format. So now it doesn't tell me when it's meant to be released or when it will be released. I seemingly can't search by release date anymore.
It's weird. Comics don't come out like films. or like albums, or even like prose novels. You know, they come out much more frequently, normally on the same day, and like, yeah, they've taken a perfect template and decided to do something different instead.
I hope kind of the user responses listened to, and we kind of get out as a hybrid of what we've got now and what we used to have. But
yeah. I mean, you've got it. Unfortunately, there isn't really a lot of competition. Like, there isn't another digital platform where you can get such a breadth of comics. Even most of the publishers have withdrawn their like digital sales.
That's true. I know we have the Comics House app, which does a good job, but it all tends to be stuff that is far more indie than Comixology. So there's a lot of TPub and Comics House. Obviously, it's their app, and kind of local UK small publishers, which is a really good thing, but for those more mainstream things,
it's just the length and breadth that was available. I mean, it's still available, but it's just really
awkward now.
Irritating to get to.
And I'm sure you live in the we've both got iPads, so I'm sure you live in the fun world of not being allowed to buy things through the
app itself.
Through the app. So you still have to go to the website to buy things because Apple and Amazon can't get along.
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, that is true on Android as well. You can buy things through the app. It always just directed you back to the website.
Okay, I thought that was just an Apple problem.
No, unfortunately, that wasn't just a Comixology problem. So it wasn't perfect. Thank you, Amazon, for fixing that oversight by burning the building down.
Burn it down. Burn it all. So should we change gears and talk about what we're here to talk about?
Absolutely.
We're 20 minutes into the episode.
Yeah, let's do this.
So this week we're here to talk about Frontiersman Volume 1 from Image. It's got words by Patrick Kindlon. It's got art by Marco Ferrari. It's got letters by Jim Campbell, and it's edited by James Heppelwhite. Frontiersman follows the story of a retired vigilante superhero by the name of Frontiersman. After giving up the superhero life, he's gone to live off the grid in the woods. Until one day he comes home to find Deontay in his living room, a university student who wants the Frontiersman to be the kind of face of a protest to stop some Pacific redwood trees from being cut down, presumably quite close to where he lives in the woods. That's not really dealt with. Don't worry about it. Which then that's kind of the entire first issue.
Yeah. That's kind of used then as the anchor to then kind of slowly introduce this world that revolves around frontiers. I've got to be honest, when I was reading it, it became Frontiersman pretty quickly for me. I get that. Very much softened the A. But yeah, like that's the core premise. He's up a tree trying to save it from being cut down, and shit happens.
Yeah, kind of because he's an ex-superhero advertising his current location. Old friends and old villains start to rear their head to do battle, and
you've obviously got the corporate greedy guys in the background wanting to cut down the trees,
who I think are Simos and Reggie.
Very nice. I'm not sure even what their names.
I could be totally wrong. I tried my best to make notes of everyone's names as they're said, but this is incredibly heavy on characters. The ones I made note of that appear, I've got at least 15 that appear and are named, and that's not including the amount of characters that are referenced as if they will or could appear. So There's characters like Fyron. He's mentioned multiple times.
Yeah.
But we never see them. The Bold Travelers as a group are mentioned frequently, but we don't really see. Travelers. Yes. And then we have stuff like Barhos, I think he's mentioned in the first issue, the guy who kind of does mind control, and Derrida is mentioned. One of his robots is strolling around at the start of issue 1. And that's before we get to like the characters you see. So there's tons and tons of detail, and it kind of reminds me of, and I think this is mentioned in Patrick Kindlon's like afterwards in the singles, that Astro City and Black Hammer are kind of inspirations towards this. And I think that kind of unnecessary almost amount of detail where you're being told about people you don't even see, and you're being told everything all the time as if you know Fyron, of the Bold Travelers fame. It's kind of information is presented to you constantly to say, hey, there's going to be this big world. And I think this kind of nails the establishing idea that the Frontiersman I've started calling him Frontiersman as well, is a kind of intro point to this big superhero world. I guess much in the way that, Invincible is an entry point to a wealth of superheroes, or the Black Hammer farm is an intro to this massive world, or Astro City is different because we kind of immediately start getting loads of different angles on it. But I think this quite early on establishes itself as a superhero universe from one specific angle, and all the flashbacks we see kind of really inform both Ethan, the Frontiersman's character, and also show kind of where all this is coming from. And it's pretty rad. Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to agree with you right there that it is pretty rad. I've enjoyed this book a lot. I agree with you. I like the casual way it kind of throws its universe around, and it's not even in such a way that it expects you to keep up. Like, as you mentioned, Fyron is mentioned a few times, so it's not like I've mentioned him in issue 1. Wait till we get to issue 20. Like you're getting the context for it, that this is an important person. This is somebody who's going to they don't even necessarily need to show up, but there's going to be something about them which is clearly important. The characters that you do meet all seem like really interesting, and in the kind of Black Hammer Astro City sense, they are homages to like classic superhero style characters, but also in the best kind of old superhero universe, it is taking that concept and pushing it one bit further. You might have to help me with the name there. Here he is. Trefoil.
Yes, is kind of, I think it was originally called Valor, we're told, and it's kind of the Captain America if things went very differently.
Yeah, and I think I really like the sort of subtle changes to this Captain America-esque character, where he sort of says it himself that he, in a bit of a kind of sense of Jenny Sparks, is a reflection of America. So in the modern day, he is brutal and he is mean because that's the that's the kind of modern America. As where during the war he was valiant and he was brave and he was that kind of classic Steve Rogers archetype. And I think that's a cool little addition. Although it's, it doesn't go into it in a lot of depth, and I don't think it needs to. It's just kind of this is the characters, the broad strokes of them.
Yeah,
here's my little idea.
And I think that really works. I think the fact that we're kind of presented with a character given a sense of who they are now and where they come from, but then there's kind of each issue ends with kind of character profiles for whoever's appeared. So in that issue, it's not particularly of Trefoil, but of him when he was Valor. So you kind of told, here's all the stuff you didn't get told this issue that we're still telling you after the fact, because now if we write a prequel comic that's got Valor in it, you'll be like, man, Valor's going to go off the rails.
Yeah, I really liked like most of the back matter in this. Both the I read in singles, so I kind of got the beginnings of a letter page, or like sometimes a letter page and sometimes just a musing page.
Yeah, and I think the kind of afterward stuff is really informative. Like, I know there's one where he talks about Green Arrow, which, is a clear influence on the kind of frontiersman character where he's
warrior.
Yeah,
quite woke.
Yes, but in a kind of out of date fashion, which I guess the kind of iconic 1970s Green Arrow, Green Lantern run, where they're like the most right wing and the most left wing, nowadays has aged, and it's like, it's a good run, but there's also bits of it that are kind of like, are you sure that was
kind of on the nose? Where I think this deals with its politics with a great deal of like fairness in terms of exposition. Like, I feel that as Frontiersman is our main character, I would assume the writers kind of follow at least a broadly similar ideal about, be good to your environment, man.
Yes.
Which I'm on board with. But I don't think it doesn't just dunk on the opposite opinions that it presents. It presents them in such a way that suggests like it's at least worth a conversation, over.
Definitely. And I think it's in issue 1 where kind of Frontiersman's trying to decide if he should go up this tree, and talks to Professor Unicel, and they kind of have a conversation where he's like, yeah, but what if they dig up something inappropriate I said in the 80s, or what if I'm not the hero they want me to be? And it's like, I think there's a realistic kind of representation of kind of how the world is right now, where it's rarely digging up from the 80s, normally it's just scrolling back on someone's Twitter for half an hour, but
but that's it. He's a relic, and he doesn't like understand the modern world as it is. And I've got to tell you, I am so sick of optimistic teenagers getting superpowers. I need a relatable character, and this old, broken down, confused man is my hero of the future.
Does it help that if we put a kind of fur hat over the top half of your face, you're very similar looking?
Not enough superheroes have massive beards. I always find it so annoying when in various comics where Superman may grow a beard, and there'll always be that dumb bit where he uses the mirror to like laser beam his beard off. And the worst bit about it is it was a rad beard.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? We don't get a lot of like goatees, or like
you get the Tony Stark or the Doctor Strange, and I know there's like a period where Thor is a bit more.
It's a bit beardier.
A bit bearded.
But this isn't like a kind of unshaved thing or a kind of casual. This is a serious beard. This is Ron Swanson in the Woods kind of.
Ron Swanson's a very good parallel to like. If you just need context for the sort of person Frontiersman is.
Yeah, I think there's an argument to be made. It's an odd argument to be made, but it's
just think Swanson. But I really like the format, and I like how it builds its world and its characters. I think that is really helped by the character design.
Definitely. That's something we've not even touched on yet, but I think Marco Ferrari's art is pretty on point basically throughout, and the character designs are like really interesting. And you can always see the influences. You can see like where the ideas have come from, but I think they are managed into an interesting kind of concept.
I think certainly like the heroes tend to be pretty straightforward homages, or I mean, not necessarily the heroes, but the crikey, what's her name? The Queen of the Fae.
Brunhild, right?
Brunhild, of course. Yeah, like she's sort of Wonder Woman-ish analog.
A bit Wonder Woman-y, but then with a name that's kind of Brunhilde. Sorry, Brunhilde. A bit Asgardian, bit Wonder Woman-y, kind of somewhere in the middle. But
there's kind of there's a trio of like villains in the background.
The Lance,
Bear,
and Reginaire.
Yeah, Reginaire, and I think their designs are all three of them are absolutely rad,
and really diverse too. I mean, the Lance is literally a woman with a lance.
It's the most straightforward, a kind of slightly medieval, or slightly Victorian, but like with a big old lance that fires things.
And then Reginaire is kind of demonic, but with kind of almost eagle style wings or angel wings in a way.
I find it really satisfying that they grow out of his head.
It's
and have hands on the end.
It's a real thinker. You know what? It immediately put me onto Digimon.
Oh yeah.
Like I think it's Devimon has got like little wings on his mask, and then Devimon is just like a ball wearing the same mask, but it's just massive wings. And I'm not saying that Devimon was a touchstone here of design, but
and then
I don't think we can rule it out.
Probably my favorite character design wise is Bear. Because it's almost
to figure out
inexplicable purple slime monster that's made of like tentacles and eyes and is really abstract. It doesn't seem to have a form. But
very much reminded me of some of the stuff we see in like Jason Aaron's Doctor Strange run. We see similar kind of monsters there.
But it inhabits a like giant grizzly bear
for reasons that
when it comes out just
sort
of drags this bear around. I don't really understand what the bear's for specifically, but I thought those designs were very cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting and really out there. Just I don't even know where you begin with that kind of concepts. It's hard to even like figure out what to say.
I think you start with the name and then just like work backwards. It's like I need a Reginaire, I need a bear, and I need a lance. Now, go.
Don't care what they are. Them's the names. Maybe. I mean, it's not beyond reason. And we see issue 2, I think it is. We see Galaxy Prime, who is basically a sentient galaxy in
a sort of Dr. Manhattan-esque.
Yes. Kind of concept.
Captain Universe, something or other.
That has one of my favorite pages, though, from all of this volume, where Frontiersman's trying to fight him and keeps just swinging with the staff.
Wolf club thing.
Club is a better word than staff. Keeps swinging and swinging, and Galaxy just kind of doesn't have a fixed form, so basically keeps just shifting out of the way. That's good stuff. And I think the kind of putting that together is just a page of I'm trying to beat you up with a club and you keep splitting in half around it while they're also having a conversation. And I just think stuff like if you'd stop using magic, physics is it works really well. I think every fight scene we see kind of informs the villain as well. And Galaxy, Trefoil, Reginaire, Lance, Bear, they kind of all bring their own thing. It never feels the same kind of interaction. I think they're all hunting down Frontiersman for their own reasons. They all bring their own point of view to it. And I think it kind of opens the door on, well, I want to know more about Galaxy and I want to know more about Lance. And it's like, I guess this has to do the same thing that Astro City or Black Hammer do in those first volumes, which is, try to find something that you want more of. And yeah, all of this kind of.
Yeah, I think it packs so much in, but I never felt bogged down in kind of exposition. I think it's really quite artfully done in the way it unfolds this world. And as I say, some of it is homage and maybe pastiche and maybe, familiar enough that you don't need that much explaining. But I think that the choices on, like Frontiersman himself, we've said he's a sort of grumpy old man, but he seems like quite a complicated character as well. He has a daughter who obviously he wants to impress, but she's much more part of the modern world than he is, and understands, where it kind of how this is going to reflect in a modern lens more than he does. And I think that's a really interesting dynamic. He's the hero, but he doesn't know best. He is out of his depth. Yeah,
I think the daughter, who we only really see in the last issue of this, issue 5, I think, maybe a little bit in issue 4, kind of helps, gives context to Frontiersman, because we kind of through that learn that he obviously had a family at some point, and kind of ties him back into reality a little bit more, because it would be easy for him to be at the top of a tree fighting supervillains and not really interact with the real world. Mm-hmm. But I think the characters of his daughter Eve, Deontay, the university student, and his friend Claire, who works at the town organic supermarket store.
Yeah.
Supermarket store. I didn't need to say the word store there. Kind of anchor him to being a real person and not just retired superhero. And I think that's something we get. I think a lot of stories that are the retired superhero comes out of retirement for reasons can often be kind of this person's done nothing since they retired from being a superhero.
Yeah, sat in a dark cave and waited for their moment to reemerge.
Whereas this kind of tells us that haven't been a person in the, decade off.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely bang on, in terms of the characterization. I got quite a strong manga influence in a lot of the art.
Yeah.
It isn't manga, but
there's definitely the DNA of it there in the concepts.
The way that movement is dealt with and the way that impacts are dealt with in fight scenes are very reminiscent of how speed lines are done more in manga than they are in sort of American comics.
I think true.
Features are quite, it's not unrealistically drawn, but things are quite exaggerated. People have very big eyes, and
the scenes we get with Frontiersman's mask where it's just his eyes are just shadows with little tiny reflections of light, which really feels kind of manga anime-esque. That kind of the way we see. The example I'm going to go with is Full Metal Alchemist, where you get the kind of minimalist versions of the characters in the backgrounds. I think that's a similar kind of vibe you get when you see him with his tiny little eyes that are just hidden in shadow.
Alphonse, despite being made of armor, has facial expressions.
Yes. Yeah. It really works, though, I think.
Agreed.
I do think the manga kind of influence creeps in. Obviously, we've referenced Digimon, which I guess the anime is more than manga. I assume there's Digimon manga, Digi-manga, I don't know. But also then Lance having Lance that is almost twice her height or something is in keeping with that kind of manga giant weapons trope.
Definitely, yeah. Just yeah, being twice the size of the person wielding it. And I mean, I think her kind of whole costume has a kind of manga thing going on with sort of very high, sort of like thigh-high boots.
Yeah, and then kind of body armor, but not everywhere. And
of course,
yeah, it's the kind of character design that you would see in One Punch Man and not bat an eyelid at.
Yeah, but I think it's knowing. I don't think it is like trying to be exploitative or like when this book wants to be sexy, it just does it. It doesn't like try and hide it behind thinly veiled costumes.
Which is, I think that's issue 4, where it's like
issue 4 into 5, which I was reading on the train. Which was a moment when you turn that page and you
best
think,
place for full page nudity.
Yeah, I'm just going to style this out.
It is something kind of superhero sex, which is a sentence that we don't get to say enough, is something that's kind of tiptoed around in, mainstream comics.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? Is that they'll never actually show anything graphic, but most female superheroes are effectively naked and just kind of painted a colour.
Frequently, at least so frequently in the past. It's been, I think it's getting better.
That's true. Yeah. Giving credit where it's due. Like, I think there have been improvements in that regard. But Spider-Woman's gone back to her old costume, hasn't she?
She has, and
despite having a rad new costume.
Yeah, really likes the kind of leather jacket, sunglasses outfit. It's just pretty cool.
Yeah, boo.
So it's also a really good Spider-Woman run. I don't know.
It is. We read it.
I'm pretty sure I've made you read it.
We read it for the club years ago now, but yeah, it was
religiously forced it on everybody for like
way back when.
However many years it was running.
Alongside the other kind of back matter in the back of this book, they talk about their approach compared to a kind of, I mean, they sort of call it out, don't they? Like a big two approach.
Yeah.
They want to be able to achieve that sort of meta-narrative, interwoven universe thing, but they sort of set out their manifesto of how they think they're going to do it better.
Yeah.
And, I mean, based on these 5 issues, yeah, fair enough.
Sorry, go on.
I think it kind of hits that.
I really like reading issue 1 of this. Was quite confident you would be into it. Not to say that we're predictable as a group, but there's certain things that I recognize as kind of will traits within a book. Here's the bit. The bit helps. But I was kind of in the nicest possible way, didn't have much of an expectation for this. I think there's been a lot of superhero indie comics recently that haven't really clicked with me. I wasn't overly into Radiant Black, and it's different, but all of the focus on Spawn haven't really spoken to me. I'm sure there are others, but I feel like my expectations were minimized with this when it really delivers on what it says it's going to do, which is kind of, just kind of good, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it rides a really nice balance between being quite like light and humorous in parts, and the conversation that he has with the old like Professor Unicell, who's now like a retired university. Well, no, he's not retired. He's a university professor. He's retired from being a superhero. It's quite like a sort of sweet conversation between old friends, and I think it hits those emotional beats as well. But the action looks and feels good. It feels like impactful, and it feels like, particularly his fight with Trefoil, feels like if he loses this, Frontiersman dies. And despite the fact that was very unlikely, it just, I don't know, it felt like the stakes were there, despite it not being a very grim book. It doesn't have to go into those places to make you feel like the events are important.
Yeah, I agree. I think there is a believable amount of kind of threat to this. I think there were chances that he wasn't going to survive the volume. I mean, we've seen similar things in comics recently, and there was every chance he wasn't going to make it, and this would be the origin story of, I don't know, how Deontay became the next Frontier Man, Frontier Boy, or it's.
Yeah, no, you're right.
It's not outside of the possibilities. It's interesting that the threat level seems real, and he takes a beating.
He does.
Which again is something that, I mean, we do see kind of retired heroes come back and take a beating and aren't who they used to be, but I feel like Frontiersman takes that to a next level where it's like, I'm being blown up, I'm being stabbed, I'm being shot at,
and it's not very specific at all on what his powers may or may not be. He seems, relatively strong and able to withstand, the stabbings and explosions as for.
Yeah. I wasn't even sure for the most part. I'm not even sure if he has powers or if he's just tough.
Just got comic powers.
Just like,
powers of a protagonist.
Woodsman tough. He is an outdoorsy type. He's used to getting stabbed all the time.
Stabbed and blown up by stuff.
I'm not an outdoorsy type. I don't know what kind of powers come with that. Strikes me as someone who walks for fun.
Don't toot.
I can't relate. I don't know. I guess that's the question. Are there powers? Is he just a tough son of a bitch?
Maybe he is.
I mean, fair play either way, I suppose. But I don't know. I think 5 issues do a really good job of selling Frontiersman as a character, but also kind of selling you on the potential his universe has, which is really interesting to me. I think, as we've said, we're both fans of Black Hammer. We're both fans of Astro City, but they kind of immediately give you the universe and then draw you in with kind of, hey, we're doing a spin-off. I think this almost feels like the spin-off, and
like Frontiersman's the spin-off of a larger universe. Yeah, for sure. I hadn't thought of that, but
which kind of, it works. It's got me curious as to where Patrick Kindlon and Marco Ferrari are going to go with this. It feels like there's lots of potential to kind of explore, and I hope that they do that exploration. I mean, it does say in the back of the trade that we're going to get Antioch.
Yeah, that word.
I can't say that word, clearly. With the tagline of Conqueror to Convict, which will apparently be where Frontiersman's story continues. So we are getting more, and it is a different thing. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't... I think there's still quite a lot I'm interested in learning about Frontiersman and his daughter, and Claire?
Claire, yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure I totally caught what their relationship was, but whether it's just sort of friend or potentially like ex-partner or something. But again, I liked her as a character. I liked her inclusion, and I'd like to see a bit more about that kind of domestic life of Frontiersman while he continues to kind of bumble through modern society and kick ass.
Definitely. I think there's a lot of potential for his story as well as the story of this world. I guess it depends if we're going to see kind of individual characters in kind of single volumes and how they all knit together. That's quite cool. If we're going to get something that is more centered around the world, that's kind of cool. I hope we avoid having a Frontiersman companion guide like that Invincible guide.
Yeah,
but,
Invincible Universe guide. Also, that was a lesson in the mistake in moving away from your brand name, because they released Guardians of the Globe, their team book. But then after 2, I think probably unpurchased volumes, it came back as Invincible Universe.
Yeah, which felt like an eager kind of please acknowledge this.
I quite liked all of those, to be honest. There were some cool like background characters in that that I don't think got quite as much page time as I would have liked, but I don't think anybody else read them, so it's one of those things.
I mean, I think you could be right, but who knows? I'm curious to see where this will go. I think there's some very strong alternative superhero stuff going on these days with, as we mentioned, Black Hammer and Astro City is set to make a comeback pretty soon through Image. We've got stuff like Crossover, which is kind of an alternative superhero universe. We've obviously got the Spawn universe, which we all talk about frequently and enjoy. So I'm curious as to what position the Frontiers verse can occupy within kind of indie comics, and I hope people check this out because I think this is a really good read.
Definitely, I think this has come in quite high in that kind of alt superhero, that modern sort of alt superhero thing. It's immediately sort of rung a bell for me. This, I think,
yeah,
a bit like Dragonfly and Dragonfly Man, Wrong Earth kind of vibe. Like it just felt like the ideas feel so perfectly formed at the moment that just up for seeing it evolve.
Definitely. And I mean it's one of our things that we're kind of relentlessly into, I think, is the all alternative superhero world. So I'm kind of hoping that the next volume, Antioch it is as good, and we're here in 5 months doing a podcast about that.
That'd be ace. Yeah, would look forward to that.
I'm not sure I've got much else to add. I think we've got that kind of unending praise section of the podcast down.
We've clearly both ended up on very much the same page, so there's nothing to argue about.
No, not much of a dispute to be had. I guess the takeaway message here is, hey, go read Frontiersman Volume 1.
Yeah, comes with a high recommendation from from us, this pair of idiots.
And as I've said, I didn't go into this thinking, hey, this is going to be my favorite comic of the new year or whatever, but it is. So, I mean, I don't know. As far as series that have had a trade out this year so far, I think this is up there as a first trade.
Definitely. I mean, it's really hit the ground running for me. And I think since doing the podcast and stuff and the website, so we both read, I think, a lot more. I mean, you used to work in the shop, didn't you? So you've probably
still work in a comic book shop.
That's true. Now at least it's your own, so you can choose what you get in.
It's nice to be mad with power.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that my reading has stepped up, and a bit like music, it's really easy to find something that's 7 out of 10, like is good and not great, and or not that it's not great, but just doesn't connect with you in a meaningful way. So you put it down and you think that was fun, and then forget about it immediately.
Yes, I agree. There's a lot of kind of good books, but I think this is comfortably a great book.
it's skirting into great for me, and I think if it continues on this trajectory, this could be one of my I look back on as a quite a fave.
Yes, I agree, and I think this is the first book I've read this year that I'm like, I think this could be a best of 2022 kind of contender. So I'm going to start writing that list now, so it's not a mad dash at the start of December.
I read Assassination again recently.
Kyle Stark, Erica Henderson.
Because it's great, yeah. And again, it's not even remotely a similar comic, but just had that same vibe of being both violent and serious, and like goofy and weird, and playing both off against each other just really perfectly. They sit together so nicely.
I agree. I think, whilst being completely different, they do have a kind of similar feel at times.
Just a vibe thing, man.
When are we going to get Kyle Stark's superhero book?
Would it be? Probably just another assassin, right? Man.
He is a little bit assassin heavy.
I would read a Fuck Tarkington solo book. Oh no, Fuck Tarkington and Dave solo book.
Is it a solo book if there's two of them?
Yes.
I'd read that book, but yeah, fair point. Yeah. So I guess this is the end of this episode.
I guess this is the end.
We have been Will and Zach, collectively bigger than capes, and will continue to be. I guess we'll be back next week. I don't really know what the schedule is at this point, but remember, the comics are bigger than capes.
Bigger than capes. No, nowhere near.
No, not even close.